By the end of this video, you'll get a step-by-step guide on how to correctly estimate work, product backlog items, user stories, which can be used by your teams. Agile estimation is extremely simple, very simple, but sometimes teams make it more complex than needed, especially for development teams. Let's not kid ourselves, there's a general fear factor around estimations. No matter if you're estimating in days, hours, story points, t-shirt sizes, stakeholders, upper management of most companies don't really understand what estimations are. An estimation is a guess. It can be wrong, it can be right. It's a guess. It's normal that it's not perfect. But management don't understand that. And because they don't understand that, when the developers, the software developers estimate stuff, they live in fear. They are afraid of estimating stuff because once they estimate it, and once a roadmap, a target date, a release date is given based on that estimation, management force them to do that because management think that the estimation is real. It's not a guess. Once we get a release date based on a guess, management force the developers to stick to that date. That's why there's so much fear around estimations. Developers are afraid to fail when giving estimations. In this video, I try to ease the estimation process so you'll know exactly how to estimate the backlog items and how to communicate these estimations to the stakeholders, to upper management. In traditional software development, the waterfall model estimations are based on the question, how long will it take? Usually done in hours, days. While in Agile, estimates are done based on the question, how big is it? The two questions look very similar. How big is it? How long will it take? But the reframing from how long will it take time to size is a game changer. The most common types of estimations in Agile are story points and t-shirt sizes. Let's start with a fun one, t-shirt sizes. Here, team will estimate user stories, backlog items based on t-shirt sizes. XS, small, medium, large, maybe even extra large. If you're using Scrum, estimates are usually done during the sprint planning session and sometimes done in the backlog refinement sessions. The product owner should take each and every single user stories, backlog items from the top high priority items, read them, and once the development team asks questions, understands the details, and they feel comfortable estimating, the development team can use this scale of t-shirt sizes. They can select the relative size of each user stories in terms of effort. You can make this process blind to prevent biases. Just simply log in Zoom or Slack or write on a piece of paper and fold it so that there's no biases. Because this type of estimation is relative, the team needs to agree first on a baseline in terms of estimates. A baseline which will be used to estimate all future stories. Don't worry, really simple to do. You start with the backlog items. I hope that your backlog is in priority with the most valuable things on top. So you take each item, you start with a small one. Try a small one first. By a small user story, I mean a simple label being written somewhere on an application, a website, something that you feel is extremely simple to do. You treat it as an excess, extra small t-shirt size. Then you take another item, maybe large, maybe big, you don't know. You take the item, you make sure that everyone understands the item, and you ask the team, what's the t-shirt size of this new item compared to the previous one? Bigger, smaller? If they say that the story is bigger, you ask them, how big? Is it an extra large, a medium? Let's say they pick medium. You say, okay, you're done with the second story. You move on to the third story and you compare the third story to the previous two stories, bigger, smaller, and you go on until you've completed your backlog. Obviously, that's the first try you're explaining people, but in the future, it's way faster. Everyone gives small, medium, large, without any explanation whatsoever. Really important to note here, everyone in the development team should have a say. when giving these estimations. The product owner is not giving estimations. Neither the Scrum Master. The development team is giving these estimations. And everyone should have a voice. If someone doesn't agree with an estimation, someone says that something should be large, and the majority of people say that it should be medium. As a Scrum Master, you should help facilitate this discussion. Help the person who said that it's large explain why they think it's large, and try to convince all the people that said it's a medium. If a person is not able to do that, you can go. The development team usually goes with a majority in terms of voting, and that's totally fine as long as most people agree on the t-shirt size. Oh, don't worry, it's a guess, it's relative. We should be okay. Another way of estimating in Agile is using story points, very similar to t-shirt sizes. Same principle, but this time you're assigning a number instead of a t-shirt size. You're assigning a number based on the question, how big is it? A number, usually 1, 2, 3, 5. Usually use a scale for estimation. We use the Fibonacci sequence 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 40. And same as for t-shirt sizes, the team needs to agree on a baseline which will be used to estimate all future stories. So you start with, you remember the simple one we had, writing something on the screen, a label. This one was an extra small. Previously, you ask the team, the development team, what do you think it is? They will usually say that it's a 1. The lowest one. Then you take the next story and you compare it to this one. Bigger, smaller. If it's bigger, how big? 2, 3, 5, 21, 40. And you can even split stories afterwards. Same as for t-shirt sizes. Maybe an extra large is too big. You tell the product owner it's too big. Split this story into smaller chunks. If 40 or 21 even, too big, split it into smaller chunks. And you can use story points. That's why I like using story points. Story points are way easier to use when you're trying to predict a release date. Simply because the velocity of a team will be a number. Really useful. As an example, let's start with, maybe you start sprint 1. You say you would take 5 stories in sprint 1. Each story, simple example, 5 story points each. That's 25 points that the team is agreeing on to take for the next sprint, sprint 1, to work on. And at the end of a sprint, let's say you work on 20 points. You didn't do one last story. You completed 20 points. That's totally fine. In the next sprint, you take 20 points instead of 25. And you go on and on. Let's say that after 3 sprints, you completed 60 points. That's 20 points per sprint. After 3 sprints, there's something that you can have, a baseline in terms of your velocity. Usually we build the velocity based on the 3 previous sprints. We need something fresh, and 3 sprints is okay. We take the average of points divided by the number of sprints. And to get the average velocity for the team, you take the total number of completed points for the 3 previous sprints for the team. In our simple example, it was 60 divided by 3. That's 20 points in terms of velocity for this team, which is really good. You have an information that you can use. Now, let's say you have 20 more stories until your next release. We said that the stories would be 5 points each. Can be different, but in our example, it's 5 points each. 20 times 5, that's 100. 100 points remaining until release. We already know that we work 20 points per sprint. You divide 100 by 20, you have 5. This means that you need 5 more sprints to complete all the stories needed until the next release. You just predicted a release date. Remember, it's only a guess. When explaining that to upper management, stakeholders, tell them that it's a guess. The best guess we can do right now with all the information we have, but it's still a guess. We think we might meet this date based on this estimation, the way we estimate, and the average velocity that we have. Now, to do the same exercise for t-shirt sizes, still possible, but a bit more complex. We don't have a number here. We have some t-shirt sizes. The velocity will not be a number. So instead of using a number format, same on the story points, we can still use a number format, but using tickets, user stories, product backlog items. So if you completed 5 items, remember the first sprint in our previous example, we completed 4 items out of 5. So it means that our velocity for the sprint is 4. Obviously, it's not as simple as that. In real life, all the stories don't have similar story points or t-shirt sizes. They vary, and they vary a lot, which is totally fine, because the velocity is an average over a period, 3 previous sprints. And when you take an average over a period, I guarantee you that if you're using story points and you're using the completed number of items in a sprint, these two measures of velocity, in the long run, average, it will be extremely similar. Try it, just plot a graph. Take the number of story points that you do per sprint and take the number of items, user stories, backlog items that you complete. You will see that the graph is very similar, goes in the same waves. Extremely similar. And if it's extremely similar, why are we using story points in the first place? We can just use product backlog items completed to calculate the velocity. Way simpler. Use t-shirt sizes. Use the product backlog items because it's way simpler. And at the end of the day, we are getting the same results. Use the graph. I guarantee you, maybe you're not believing me right now. Use the graph. Plot it down on the graph and you'll see very similar results. The trend is similar. This also brings an interesting side effect. Lots of anti-patterns, toxic anti-patterns are impossible. Example, if your team is measuring in story points, stakeholders, upper management, even the product owner or the scrum master might try to measure the performance of someone based on the number of story points completed per sprint for that person. Can't do that if you're working based on items completed. And when the team knows that you can't compare individual members based on story points within the team or even compare two teams, they are more at ease with estimations. And when they are more at ease with estimations, they won't be afraid to estimate correctly. No longer need to pad these estimates to make the team or individuals look better. So you will have more precise estimations which you can use to predict releases way better. Which brings me to my next point. If you want more tips, insights on Agile Scrum personal growth, click on the video that stands out the most on the screen right now, and I'll see you in a few seconds.